Welcome to the Podium Psychology Podcast with me, your host, Hugh Gilmore. The Podium Psychology Podcast is recorded in front of a live audience. We offer one of you, the audience, an opportunity to have a live psychology session with me, powered by a motivational interviewing approach. Then you, the audience, get to ask questions. There are no edits. This is a live, unplanned session. The problems are real, and so is the impact. Now, let's begin with this episode's volunteer. So Mary, how can I help you today? What's the issue for you?
I wanted to bring up that I think something I find difficult is having a really unproductive response to failure or setbacks in health and fitness, also in my work life, I guess in my personal life as well.
Yeah. Okay, so Mary, do you want to just tell me a little bit more about that? You sound as if you're struggling with something.
It depends on the context, but I find that when I obviously feel quite motivated when things are going well. When challenges come along, for example, if I get an injury during my training, I always find that I really struggle to be quite rational in my response. Instead, I'm more prone to want to give up, to get really intensely frustrated, to get fixated on it, and to lose a lot of motivation. In my work life as well, if there are challenges, if there are slower periods in coaching, if there are financial difficulties, anything, I really notice that it can really kill my motivation and can make me go into a bit of a self-sabotaging mode.
Okay, so you experience setbacks, and then when you experience these setbacks, you're challenged in a big degree, and you start doing things that are counterproductive to what you want to achieve.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, can you give me some examples of, is there a specific thing that you'd like to conquer today, if we could do that?
Yeah. For example, I think when it comes to my job and being self-employed, I guess, is one that I find quite difficult. So, for example, if a client drops out, then I find it very difficult to rationalize and to say to myself that it is okay and I'm still capable, and that it's not financially landing me in a terrible position. Instead, I can respond to it by thinking I'm incapable, I'm not really meant to be doing this job, I should be doing something else, all these thoughts. What's the point in this? Maybe I should just give up. And I find that because I start to respond that way, then I become quite unmotivated with working in general, with getting admin tasks done, with kind of being motivated to do the social media side of things. And I will end up sabotaging by, I guess, doing things to procrastinate.
Okay, so whenever you get a setback, like a client leaving, you end up in a position where you drop your motivation in all the other areas, and you're thinking about the things that maybe could go wrong or how difficult this is, and that stops you from taking these steps, and then you procrastinate.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there scenarios? I mean, it sounds like obviously a very difficult thing. Being self-employed obviously requires a degree of, I don't know what the word is. It's a degree of somebody who's brave enough to take risk, and smart enough to self-organize, and also then at the same time, useful enough to think about how do they further themselves and develop what they've got. So there's a lot of skill set within what you've got. I'm curious, is there a time when you've lost a client and it hasn't affected you?
I think when I've had when there's maybe not so much of an opportunity for me to turn it inwards. So when I can tell or feel quite confident that perhaps that person isn't ready, then I think I feel okay about it. Maybe it's kind of a relief as well, because I've found it challenging to work with someone who's not, ironically, not really motivated themselves.
Mm-hmm.
When it seems a bit more clear that the problem doesn't lie with me, when it's a bit more ambiguous, I think I tend to kind of turn inward on that and start to question my own skill set.
It's not me, it's them.
Yeah.
So it's whenever it's very clear that it's not about you. When it is about you, has there ever been an incident where you've decided just to keep on going and keep up with the same level of effort, or even redouble your efforts?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Can you describe to me what occurs in that setting?
Yeah, I guess there have been times where I've had a burst of motivation that I really want to be successful with that person, or perhaps where I've noticed some ambivalence on their part, and kind of being able to reflect on perhaps I haven't explained something very well. Perhaps I've tried to give too much information, or I haven't quite used the right strategy. So then I'm become quite motivated to correct that or to do a better job next time. Yeah, I have had occasions of that as well.
Okay. So I'm curious, you've got this is something that really affects you, but it's also something that you've dealt with at times. What would be the thing that you really want to focus on today? What would be the most helpful outcome of today?
I think perhaps not, to be honest, it would probably just be the ability to not be quite so hard on myself in that situation, and not treat scenarios where I don't feel that confident as catastrophic.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it sounds to me as if you're actually ready to change, and nearly it might be more useful for me to take a different approach to motivational interviewing and use something that's called rational emotive behavior therapy. Would it be okay if I use that as well as motivational interviewing tonight with you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think it would be relevant for both, because I think there's definitely part of me that's a bit resistant to the change, but also feels quite ready.
Okay, well, let's explore that resistance. Like, if you're resistant to change in how you think about this, what are you talking about there? What do you feel whenever you're being resistant to it?
I think it's a doubt that I would be capable of that. Feeling quite stuck, and that there is, I wouldn't necessarily be able to do it successfully to make a change.
Okay, so if you're going to try and change, you have to be successful.
Yeah.
Okay, and is that a useful belief for you to hold?
No, I think I guess it's a fear that if I'm not successful, am I going to feel worse than when I started or before I attempted the change?
Okay, so you're afraid that things will get worse and you'll feel emotionally worse?
Yeah.
Okay. So is this then how you feel emotionally? It's not a financial problem?
Yeah, it would be largely to do with emotions.
Okay, so this feels then like nearly like a stab through the heart of, oh my goodness, I'm terrible and bad at what I do. I see you nodding your head. And
Yeah.
okay, so it's a massive amount of self-doubt then whenever you get this experience. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And a big knock to my confidence.
Okay. Now, when you say it's a big knock to your confidence, what are you telling yourself when you experience that?
When I experience a setback and it's knocking, I think it would tell me that I'm just that I'm not very good at this. Perhaps I'm not capable of doing this well. I'm not capable of being successful.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not capable of being successful.
Mm.
I'm not very good at this. Okay. And then you said your loss of confidence, but what would be the emotion that you would have whenever you have that loss of confidence? What emotions? It could be a number of them.
I think it would be fear or anxiety mostly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you feel fear and anxious. And is there any behaviors that you have? Obviously, the withdrawal from social media, the withdrawal from putting efforts in your business. Is there any other behaviors you have?
I think it would be withdrawal from that, maybe withdrawal a bit socially as well. Mm-hmm. Because I think when I'm feeling low in confidence, I'm not keen to interact with people in general. Mm-hmm. It would be things like putting off tasks that need to be done. Mm-hmm. Putting off, I guess if there's an area of something I could learn from a scenario that hasn't gone particularly well, for example, doing some more reading or some more study. But if I'm experiencing that sense of failure and the difficulty with that, then I won't do that. I'll also put off doing that as well and think, what's the point, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're feeling this fear and this withdrawal and this procrastination, whenever you're procrastinating, are you angry about what you have to do? In that I shouldn't have to do this and it shouldn't be that difficult, or are you more fearful when you're procrastinating?
Yeah, I think the thought of I shouldn't have to do this, or being angry with myself for failing, but also for not stopping myself procrastinating.
Okay, so you get angry with yourself as well then. So it's fear, which is anxiety, and then to basically fuck yourself up twice as much, you add in a bit of anger, to put it bluntly. Yeah. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, just stick a bit of an extra boot in while I'm there.
Well, look, while you're down, is there any other emotions that you throw in on top of that? Is maybe a bit of guilt and shame as well?
Yeah, and insecurity, I would say.
Insecure. So you said yeah to guilt and shame. Like I want to be very specific. I want to really grab it. So is it guilt? Is it shame? Like which one is it? Is it both? Which one's more?
I think it would be both. I think it would be maybe more shame, actually, that I'm ashamed of myself for not responding better. I'm ashamed of myself for not dealing with it better. And ashamed of myself for not being more capable or not being successful.
Okay, look, that's an awful lot. Like that's you're anxious, you're angry, and you've got shame as well there. I want to just sort of go like there's fear, there's shame, there's anger. Like which is the biggest, most difficult one for you?
I think it would probably be the fear and anxiety, actually, because I think that what it ends up coming down to is fear that all of this reaction means that I'm not going to be successful and that I'm not going to be able to do this job really, really well if this keeps happening over and over.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sometimes we feel some emotions and we choose to focus on those emotions because it's easier to feel fearful than it is to feel the other things. Because I'm going to hazard a guess that it's easier to be afraid than it is to be angry.
Yeah.
All right. And it's also easier to be angry than it is to be feel shame. Is that
Mm.
fair to say?
Yeah.
So actually, nearly, if I was to put these in like what's the deepest emotion you feel and the one that you're most scared of, it's not the fear of it going wrong. It's the anger that maybe you could have actually done something about it. And then
Mm.
it's shame that you didn't do something about it, and actually that people will judge you for being a failure.
Yeah. That's a very accurate description of what's going on.
Okay. So if I'm gonna deal with this, I think, would you mind if we tried to deal with the shame?
Sure.
Because if we deal with the shame, then you might not be as angry. And then if you're not as angry, you might not be as scared. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah,
Okay.
it's interesting to think of it as a different directionality.
Hmm. So the way I like to understand emotions is that people will say emotions are, like you've got, your anger, right? And then you've got, your anxiety. But actually, like these are not perfect emotions with perfect colors and shapes. They're much more like a blend of things that's all messed up, like a rainbow. And you
Mm.
might you might feel a blend of certain things all mixed in about different things, and we're just trying to separate them out. So we are, and give them sort of clear definitions. So if you're feeling shame, one of the reasons you feel shame is that because you're telling yourself something. What are you telling yourself about this failure that might occur? Or if this failure did occur and it was down to you, what would you be telling yourself about that?
Um, it, I think it would largely be two things. So one would be that I'm incompetent. Um, the other being that other people will think that I'm a failure
Okay.
or that I'm incompetent.
You're saying I should not be incompetent and other people should not judge me as being incompetent. And if
Yeah.
they do judge me as being incompetent, then what?
If other people judge me as incompetent, then let me think. If other people judge me as incompetent, I mean, that would come down to shame. That would mean I would be deeply ashamed of myself. I would deem myself as a failure.
Okay, if other people judge me as incompetent, then I am a failure, and I am you're really putting yourself down there. Like I'm a failure, and you're probably saying other things as well. Is there anything else?
Um, that I'll probably never be successful.
That hurt to say.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when I talk to other people who are self-employed, it's not uncommon to feel this way.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I can see. I mean, I can see how all the emotions I'm experiencing are not helpful or constructive in any way.
Yeah, that was difficult for you to say. I could hear the emotion in your voice when you said that. I'll probably never be successful.
Mm.
Was there anything more on top of that?
Um, I don't think so. I mean, I think that's an important one to me. Um, I think that would that would help me feel. I maybe sorry. I equate the success with that means I can feel confident in myself that I've done well and that I am capable.
Yeah. So I should not be incompetent. Others will judge me as incompetent, and I'll probably never be successful then. Okay. Sorry, I write very slowly. I'm not very competent. I'm not a very competent writer. So is that belief is creating this capacity for you to feel shame?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you're saying that you have to be successful. If you're not successful when the client leaves, that's a sign you're not successful. It means you'll probably never be successful, and others will judge you for that, and you'll never reach this goal of yours of whatever success is. Can you tell me what exactly is success? Like, is that a, prime time slot in TV? Is that a £1 million turnover? Is that a really happy client base? Is that, walks on the beach and pina coladas and having loads of people work for you and you do nothing? Like, what does your success look like?
Yeah, it's interesting that you ask that, because it makes me realize that I don't think I have a definition of what that endpoint looks like. I think it would look like I mean, the unrealistic version would be that every client is walking away feeling changed and very happy, and that everyone I'm working with is helped massively. There are no complaints. I'm making enough money to live off, and I never have any any doubts about myself, which would be the unrealistic version. I think the realistic version would just be that I feel financially secure in how much money I'm making, and that I feel that the majority of my clients are very successful, but that there is also like a steady stream of clients as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that you've defined your success now. It's very interesting that you've been making yourself feel all that without a clear definition of knowing what you want to get.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly normal. People don't spend time thinking about these. If I was to ask you now to spend 5 minutes writing down everything you want to achieve in your life, you might only take 2 minutes and you'd be done.
Mm.
So, right, I have to be successful. I shouldn't be incompetent. Others will just will judge me as incompetent, and I'll never be successful. Right? Is that belief helpful to you?
No, not at all.
Does it give you anything at all?
No, because it's not. There can sometimes be a false belief that if I'm being tough on myself, that might motivate me. But no, I don't think it's ever been. And then it has that added effect of like I said before, where it doesn't work to be that rigid or that tough with myself, and then because I'm setting that expectation, I'm kind of setting myself up to fail a bit, and then putting myself in the position of procrastinating, and then using the procrastination to reinforce the belief that I'm not capable.
It's a bit of a vicious cycle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Set high standards, demand perfection, don't achieve it, and then just continue to hate yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it logical, that belief?
No, because because it's a perfectionist belief that isn't really in line with reality. Even if I do my job really well, it's not going to be 100% success rate, and I'm not going to be financially secure all the time, and I'm not going to have accolades and everyone telling me that I'm amazing and that I'm the best coach in the world.
Yeah. And even if you did have those accolades and you did have that success and people were saying you're the best coach in the world, would that be worth something to you? Why would that be important to have other people's approval?
I think that would come back to the confidence thing, that perhaps I don't. That's something to work on, is believing that and saying that to myself, rather than thinking that has to come from that recognition has to come from other people to mean something.
Mm-hmm. So you think confidence is given to people by other people's approval?
No.
Is that not what you just said, kind of, though?
Yeah. But that's not in line with what when I think about it properly, it's not in line with what I've experienced for times where I feel really confident, which is actually that when I feel like I've done something well, or I've ironically overcome a failure or a setback, then that's a huge confidence booster.
If you want to be in the spotlight, you'll dance like a clown if the spotlight leaves. And this is what happens when we need other people's approval. Is once we need it and we demand it and crave it and we think it's a good thing, we then start dancing to make sure they shine more light on us, and we behave like a clown. We become controlled by what other people's expectations are of us, as opposed to by what our own are. And actually, when we talk about confidence is just the idea that I'm capable of something and I know I can do something. But you don't need confidence for what you're trying to do. What you're trying to do is, I'm taking a risk and I'm being brave. I'm betting on myself to run a business. I'm not here for confidence. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's partly where the frustration comes in, is that at times when I've taken risks, I've felt really positive that I've put myself out there and done that. Obviously, even more so if it is successful, but I actually feel quite good when I take a risk and if it doesn't pay off, but I realize that I am okay at the other end of it.
Mm-hmm.
That feels a lot better than the feeling I get. Sorry, that doesn't feel nearly as challenging as the feeling that I get from not taking the risk and feeling that shame of not trying and putting it off and just telling myself that I'm not capable.
Yeah. So safe risks and learning risks are useful and much more useful than taking no risk. So as we're discussing your belief here, and your belief is the thing that causes the emotion that you feel of shame, or the potential for shame, anger, anxiety, and your belief is the thing that causes the withdrawal and the avoidance, the procrastination, and these, I'm not very good at things, I'm not good at this, I'm fearful. We want to challenge that belief, and you've said that belief isn't helpful, it isn't logical, and it isn't it's not really evidence-based either, and I could spend time going into that, but I don't think we need to. So the next thing we do is we say, let's change it, let's make it a bit more flexible. So to make it a bit more flexible, what we're going to do is we're going to make it into a preference. So I'd prefer to be successful and have all of my risks pay off, but I don't need to be successful. How does it feel that does that sound like something that's a more useful belief?
Yeah.
What emotion would you feel if you were saying, I prefer to be successful, but I don't need to be?
I think I would feel a lot calmer, and I would feel less scared of taking risks.
Okay. And if I said to you, I prefer others don't judge me as incompetent, but I don't need others to judge me as competent, how does that feel? Is that a stronger one than the previous one, or what is that like compared to it?
Yeah, that one feels more challenging to convince myself.
Okay.
But I think that, again, like the avoidance of that, or trying to control others' judgment for me, and how stressful and anxiety inducing that is, and the fact that it's not even possible to control what everyone else thinks of me, and having a more flexible stance on it, which is that I like you said, I would prefer that others judge me as competent and capable, but I don't need that to prove to myself that I am those things, and I also don't need that to I'm not quite sure of the wording, but that it doesn't equate me, and someone else's judgment of me as incompetent does not equate to me being a failure or considering myself a failure.
Are you capable of judging other people as failures?
Yeah.
And you can make an accurate assessment as to whether or not somebody's a failure or a success?
I wouldn't go as far as to say it's accurate.
Okay, so you can't make an accurate assessment whether or not someone else is a failure?
No, I mean, I guess it depends on the context, but no, I would, if I was applying it to someone else, I would say that I don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of this, or that it doesn't, or that there is something that they could learn from it, or that it's not a complete failure, or something like that.
And even if somebody couldn't learn something from their failure and they just had to go off in a different direction, is that a failure itself?
Not necessarily, or even if it is, I wouldn't label that person as a failure or think of them as an incompetent person. I would think of it as a task that they've failed at completion or failed at doing successfully or something like that.
Okay. So maybe the belief could be, I don't need to be competent at everything I do, and I don't need to be successful. I prefer to be successful. I prefer to be competent, but actually on this journey, I'm going to make failures that shape my journey and help me progress, or at least tell me what's not successful. Is that a useful belief to help hold?
Yeah, that's very useful.
Okay.
I don't, if I think that to myself, I don't feel the shame. I feel it feels a lot more comfortable to say that to myself. And it wouldn't mean not challenging myself, which I think can sometimes, make people a bit fearful if they are lenient with themselves, then that means that they won't challenge themselves.
One of the things about REBT is that we don't want people to feel happy when they should be feeling shame. If you've done wrong and you're worried about other people judging you, and that's what shame is culturally useful. It's a reason, we feel shame if we run about naked, is because, well, actually other people are judging us, and that's his way of creating social control, for people to go, well, you know what, put some clothes on. So the point being that shame is actually a useful emotion, but it's not useful if it completely cripples us. It's useful if we have maybe a healthier version of shame, like remorse. I've done something that I'm unhappy about, and I want to do better next time. Do you think that belief of I prefer to be successful and I prefer to be incompetent, but I prefer to be competent, but I don't need to be, and I don't have to be judged competent by other people? Do you think that would allow you to feel something a bit more like remorse when you experience a mistake that allows you to move on?
Yeah. And that would be the biggest thing for me, is I don't necessarily, when it has happened where I haven't felt shame, I don't, it's not that I don't feel negative feelings about it. It feels good when I can say to myself, what can I learn from this? Or, oh, that didn't quite work. What, I might do that a bit differently. How could I do that differently in future? So it would be nice to increase the frequency of that response.
Yeah.
By thinking of it more flexibly.
Okay. So whenever you have a setback and you lose a client or something else occurs that, experiences this symptom of procrastination, withdrawal, anxious, anger, and then the shame there, what would be the best response for you to have? What would be the ideal response for you to have in that scenario? behaviorally, I mean?
It would be to say to myself, this doesn't mean I'm a failure. This isn't a reflection of my competence. I'm going to be making mistakes along the way. Things are going to go wrong along the way, and there are opportunities to learn, and it's not while it is preferable for things to be smooth sailing, it doesn't mean that it's catastrophic if that doesn't happen.
Yeah. So this is interesting, because I asked from a behavior point of view, and you've just given me all the self-talk, all the stuff that you yourself. Behaviorally, what would you do? I mean, you've talked about withdrawing, procrastinating.
Okay,
what would be the behavior that you'd like to see?
It would be it would be something like doing some reading on a particular area that I realize I perhaps didn't understand or didn't have knowledge of, as much knowledge of as I would like. It would be taking some time to sit and think through what I could learn, but also through how I can pick myself back up. And it would be doing something like writing a summary of what happened, or typing up a bit of a summary and what I might do differently next time. But it would also be just not having that situation lead to me, not doing any work for the rest of the day, or kind of just ending up faffing around a bit on my computer, whereas if that hadn't happened, I would have probably just got on with my work.
Okay, so it sounds nearly as if there's a little bit of self-comforting in terms of a summary, talking to self, learning about the area that you feel you might need to improve upon, and also reading about how to pick yourself up. I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily the reading about how to pick yourself up, because I think you probably know how to pick yourself up, given that you said, I would set this aside and complete the day's tasks. Well,
yeah, I think it would also be reading about I mean, it would, for a specific example, like if it was someone presenting with a particular issue or a particular complaint, and I felt that I hadn't perhaps explained it very well in a client session, then it might be realizing, okay, I don't know as much about that particular topic as I thought I did, so I'm going to go away and do some reading about it, as opposed to responding to that situation by, oh, look, you didn't know anything there, or you didn't word that very well. This is a confirmation that you're not very good at this job.
Yeah. Okay. So I would suggest that maybe something that you could do is, if it's all right to suggest something you could maybe do is develop a peer network where you actually get the opportunity to share what you're finding difficult with other people who are in a similar role. Is that a possibility? Have you got any connected networks like that?
Yeah, I do, and it's not something I take advantage of enough, really. Something I think that kind of gets a bit underestimated in self-employment is that how important that is, or how useful that can be. So yeah, that would be actually a really good idea.
Okay. Right. So I'm curious, what are you taking away from this session today?
I'm taking away that I feel like I have a good plan of action for how I could respond next time this happens, including the self-talk. I feel, I generally feel less scared about that scenario happening now, because I feel like I've got a good series of thoughts and strategies to go through. So I don't, I feel like it's not as scary thinking, when is this going to happen next? Because I don't have the fear that I will respond to it very negatively, or that will be, I won't get much work done over the next few days because I'll kind of procrastinate and just feel frustrated. I feel quite positive.
Okay, well, I mean, that's great. You've obviously come up with a lot of plans there yourself, and solutions to this. I think something that might just be a thing to give you a bit of, what's the word, a bit of a bolster, is maybe writing down this belief of I prefer to be successful and I'd prefer to be judged competent by others, but I don't need to be successful every time, and I don't need to be judged competent by others to continue on with what I need to do and to continue trying to do better and learn.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
If you write that down and keep that somewhere where you can go and access that, because part of the issue is that we fool ourselves into thinking we should feel happy and joy all the time, but actually what we need to do is we need to feel what is more useful than shame, is what is more useful than anxiety is concern, and what is more useful than anger is assertiveness and dealing with our frustrations appropriately. So it's about making these emotions become more useful behaviors, not trying to just turn ourselves into happy, maniacal people whenever we've got difficult things to deal with. Thank you very much for volunteering today. I've gone slightly into the realm of REBT and tried to keep it MI consistent. So on that, what I'm going to do is just, do you have any other questions for me based on today's session or anything else?
No, and I was aware of you having to do that. I was feeling guilty during it that it kind of had to go down that path, but it was genuinely very, very useful for me. So thank you.
Well, it's perfectly fine, but more importantly, why were you feeling guilty?
I think in a kind of setting with other people, I'm aware that if people are here to observe a more MI side, then I wasn't sure if it wouldn't perhaps be as useful. I mean, I use REBT with my client group, so I do know how useful it can be, but I guess I'm just aware that if you were trying to stick to MI, then it might have kind of gone off piste a bit.
The two therapies or approaches, sorry, because MI is not technically a therapy, are not incompatible. But I was more so hinting at the fact that guilty indicates that you've done some wrong, and you haven't done wrong. And even if you had done wrong, you can, make up for that, but you haven't done wrong. But it's actually quite useful to try for me to demonstrate a blend of the two.
Yeah.
But there is conflicts between them, and that's a big topic. So thank you very much for your contribution today, Mary. Do we have any questions from the audience or from yourself, Mary?
No, I'll leave it to others.
So you can shout out your questions, stick your hand up or whatever if you want, or you can drop them into the chat box if you've got any questions about what's occurred in today's session. And we go. So we have a hand up there. Go ahead.
Hi, Hugh. Hi, Mary. Mary, thanks. Like I find that incredibly useful. And again, it just struck me what a real privilege it is for Hugh, for you to create this space, and for those of you that are volunteering and bringing this stuff to the table. Amazingly useful. So thanks for that. One of the things that I was wondering about, Hugh, can I ask about when you were pulling out, sort of the emphasis on the emotions there with anger and fear and shame? Is there, were you working to a framework there? Is there a hierarchy of emotions that led you to sort of identify shame as the primary one that you went for?
That's a good question. And the answer is it could be. And the other answer is, I don't know if there is.
Ah.
So in my training in rational motor behavior therapy, the people that I've learned from and have significant experience of ours, I would bring up these types of difficult questions. And it's very simplistic to think that a person feels one emotion, because you don't ever feel one emotion. It is more like equalizer levels on a, in a music thing where you've got different bits you've got that are going down.
Yep.
So any one experience, you'll experience a range of emotions, and also as you process that, because you start off, somebody does something wrong, you'll feel angry about it, and then it'll change from anger into something else, and so the levels will change and you'll have different emotions. So I can think of a scenario I felt angry about, and then now I'm feeling more so a bit of sadness about, because actually it's much easier for me to feel anger than it is for me to feel sad, because what has really happened is I've been let down by somebody. And that's a perfect example of the analysis of what's occurring to us and what we believe about it is layered. And as humans, the first thing we're probably going to do is we're probably going to go, what's the danger? The danger is I need to be concerned or I need to be aggressive. Which, if we think about it, flight, fight, freeze, those are the things that we prefer to do, and those are then the emotions of anger and fear. The most common emotion that we do feel is actually anger. As human beings, we're very angry things. So quite often it's something in below that. And the other thing that I've learned over time interacting with other people who, thank you very much for your comment there. The person who's just put that in. The other thing I've learned over time is that, shame seems to be one that sits in below. And quite often we get to the point where people do feel a lot of shame about what they experience, and that's a big driver of negative emotion and negative experiences. So yeah, I don't know if that helps, but the other thing is, like, whenever I do this, I'll actually in person, I'll put out a sheet of emotions and go, like, circle all the ones you feel and then rank them in order,
Yeah, it was really it's fascinating to listen to, actually, and just pulling out those different threads and seeing kind of where it lands. And thank you for breaking it down for me. And also, again, like, just struck me as very powerful, that piece at the end. And I could really identify, when you were talking about, so, what are you taking away? And Mary, you were talking about the things that you would say to yourself, and you instantly brought it back. I'm hearing the self-talk. What would I see you doing? And that, again, was that lovely aha surprise moment of, oh, right, okay, Claire, that's the piece. Especially maybe when, if you're thinking a lot, you tend to think your way around things, that actually it's the doing part that might prompt a wee bit of change. So no, thanks a million. That was brilliant.
Do you know what? We are actually human doings. I don't think
that's lovely.
I don't think we're actually designed to be, and I don't think we're designed to think necessarily. I don't think we're designed to think, but I think the process of existing and doing useful things is the process of physically doing things.
Yep.
Whether that be communicating, creating, working, exploring, escaping, whatever. So it's probably one of the things why that in species, there's a species of this is getting down a deep rabbit hole, but in a species of jellyfish which moves, it basically moves, swims around, and then at the end of its life cycle, it plants itself to the reef, and then it eats its own brain, so it can reproduce. And this is why they then think brains are essentially functions for movement. So
wow,
that's why we evolve a brain. So, like, trees don't have a brain. This eats its brain. So again, when we do movement, we're actually using our brain to move and coordinate ourselves. And this is probably one of the reasons why exercise is so fantastic for mental health and well-being and just stress reduction. But the doing aspect is confidence. If you look at Bandura's model of confidence mastery, the doing, being a master of something, is the things that gives us confidence. So I want Mary to go home and go, yeah, I'm seeing myself do the thing that I didn't think I would do, therefore I'm now confident of it. That's more powerful than any self-talk. And again, that's what Bandura's research showed. So a clear doing goal is always beneficial.
Yeah. Although, do you know what? That's fascinating as well, because like I've spent a lot of time in classrooms on Bandura, and I've never heard it explained so brilliantly. That's what it is. It's the doing piece, and there's a lot of waffle around that, but that's the core of it.
Yeah. That's massively it. Yeah. Thank you very much for your contributions and questions, and much appreciated. We've got I agree, Claire, coming in from Mary, and we've had somebody there who has said it's a fascinating session. Can't wait to listen to the rest of the recording, but they have to go. Thank you for that. Is there any other questions to come in tonight on that session? Yeah, we have one there. Go ahead, your hand is up. Off you go.
Thank you, and thank you again for the session tonight, and thank you for volunteering as well, Mary. That was absolutely wonderful to listen on. My question is, now this belief in this case seems to be quite deep rooted, and it seems like it'd be a big change to commit to and have the sort of skills to actually in action. So would you then consider complementing sort of a session like this with because obviously it's very client led, then you complement that with some training, some psych skills maybe, and how she can then implement that better or have a higher chance of being able to execute the change she's looking to do?
Well, I suppose I'd ask the question as to why do you think that I would do something like that, and what is it you think doing something like that might achieve?
I think it would probably become apparent if she struggled, if you had a second session and she came back and says, wasn't so successful at it, and these are the reasons, and then you might take the initiative to say, okay, from what you've said, it sounds like, because a lot of that was self-talk based, here are some tools we could maybe use to improve your self-talk or help you use the self-talk that you think will help you make the change that you're looking to do.
So there is something that I would do within MI, which is I'd ask somebody like, how confident are they going to be of doing this behavioral goal? So if how confident out of 10 are you? Then if she said back to me, I'm 8 out of 10 confident I could do that, I'd be like, okay, that's a good goal. And if it wasn't 8 out of 10, I'd say it's not our goal then. It's not a behavioral goal. And the reason being is because I want Mary to experience success and only do something that she can identify as being very likely of success as an 8 out of 10 or higher. Because success, again, is going back to Bandura, is the breeding ground of confidence. So I want to create whatever intervention is likely to be successful. But what's interesting about what you've proposed is you've said you've done all this. Now could we add in some psych skills and add in something else, and really like bolster that up. And part of the issue with that is that's more investment of time. So from a sports psychology point of view, I'm now saying, right, we've done all this. Now can we do this and this? And that is, in my perspective, that's a higher cost of time for a resource. And it's me then putting on a approach that doesn't that hasn't come out of Mary's head, right? And that she hasn't agreed with. Now there are some suggestions that I made and threw out, but I put them out with full expectation of we don't have to do any of the approaches that I put out. So the buy-in from Mary is critical. So we don't ever put anything on somebody in MI because they then push back against us, and that's psychological reactance, and we don't necessarily want to offer in more things because then it becomes more complex. And really, if we keep it nice and simple, she's got something she's going to say to herself, she's going to write down the goal, she's going to try and attempt the behaviors, and if she fails, then we review the failure and go like, okay, why did it not work? because when she comes back, I'm not judgmental. I'm not concerned if she failed. I start with what's happened. So if somebody's failed, it might be the best thing, because then we go, okay, this is more difficult. We need a smaller goal, that it is a more simple goal for you to try and achieve in that scenario. So how do you feel about that as a response? What are your thoughts on that? Because I'm aware that probably goes counter to what might be getting taught.
It's not that it's counter to some of my understanding from obviously having training in insight skills and a bit of MI. It makes sense from that regard. I've always just been trying to work out for myself this balance between, yes, we're looking to get the person to come up with all these ideas of what they can do to make the changes. It comes from them for the buy-in, the motivation. That's the entire point of it. I guess it goes to, if there is the failure, would it then only be if the person said, yeah, I thought the self-talk in this case was what was going to help. It didn't. I guess would you then suggest it, or could one then suggest, okay, we could work on that? And if they then want to do it, then that's the buy-in and it's a good option to explore. Or as you said, with them, like, okay, we'll go a different route and look for that 8 out of 10. It's sort of finding that balance between the two sort of philosophical points of view of it being purely client-based, or client-led rather, and adding or rather not client-led, only being strengths-focused on what they already have and what you're trying to get, what they think they can do, and helping them with any deficits they may have that may also help.
Yeah. So I think, again, it's like you're looking to take a belt and braces approach, and we also don't know that the self-talk, I mean, because Mary talked about the self-talk aspect of it first, or the internal thoughts, that may be very beneficial. But in an REBT model, I want to always target the belief as the core thing, because the belief is what creates the self-talk. So hopefully the belief, if I can change that, that'll create a larger effect on both behaviors and self-talk, and also emotionally as well. So I think it's a level. So if we think about behavior change in 4 different levels, we've got philosophy, we've got the cognitive or inferential judgments, we've got then the behavioral skill, and then we've got the situation. So I can change somebody's situation. I can change Mary's by saying, Mary, you never have to work again. Here's £1 million, or £2 million because of inflation, right? Or I could go up and say, Mary, I'm going to teach you some behavioral skills about how to respond to setbacks. And I teach these behavioral skills, but it actually turns out that Mary's very bad at her job, and the behavioral skills about continuing on working don't work, and she actually lacks competency at the level that she's at. So that behavioral skills may work, it may help her continue on the procrastination or against the procrastination, but she still may not be successful even though she's got behavioral skills. The next level up is then the inferences, the cognitions about it. I'm thinking that this is, I'm not liked by my clients or whatever, right? And I would say, well, CBT would teach us, how do you know that you're not liked? What evidence have you got? You can't mind read, you don't know that. But the issue there is that could be true. You might not be liked by all of your clients. In that case, the philosophy is, I don't need to be liked by all of my clients. I'd prefer to be, but I don't need to be, to try and find other clients and continue on my learning and development and continue working in the direction that I want to go. And that's a philosophical behavior change. All of these levels have different qualities. Situational is really easy if you've got 2 million. But it doesn't develop the person. Behavioral develops a person. Cognition develops a person, but it can be a mistruth, in which case then philosophical is the strongest level of behavior change, because it works, because it allows you to experience a more useful, helpful emotion and behaviors and thoughts. I've gone down a rabbit hole there. I apologize. Sorry.
A very useful rabbit hole. That helps.
Cool. Thank you very much for your contributions and questions. Hopefully that's of benefit. Have we any? Thank you very much, guys. And please do, if this is of benefit, please do share it, so that I can continue having fresh volunteers every night to help us learn. Thank you very much, and good night. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. If you're interested in getting somebody who's trained in motivational interviewing to work with you, there's a list of people on my website who I've personally trained up in motivational interviewing. However, if you're interested in getting trained up, get in touch with me. A massive thanks to the person who stepped forward anonymously with their problem. I look forward to helping another anonymous person take a step forward in the right direction for them next week. If you're interested in being part of the live audience, please sign up. My YouTube channel can be subscribed to and has a host of playlists and videos there which are related to motivational interviewing and performance psychology. If you want to subscribe or share that, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Look after yourself, and I look forward to seeing you in the next live podcast.